Today, I want to talk about something very important. Well, perhaps not very important, quite important. It's about the sense of self. So I've been listening to a lot of identity politics, woke feminism. The reason why I think, well, maybe not a reason. There is so much debate, so much vitriol, so much toxicity about this subject because the premise is comes from a misguided place to begin with. The premise being human identity. Where does our sense of self, where does our identity, where does our personality, where does it really come from? Our sense of self comes from other people. So to be ourselves is to be other people. This is just a theory, but I believe what we call theory of mind, right? Us thinking about how other people are thinking. The theory of mind comes from our sense of self, right? Like feeling like an individual comes from theory of mind, which is actually thinking about other people, right? It doesn't come from us, it comes from other people. What does that mean? Basically, we have created the most narcissistic technology in existence, right? Which is social media. Social media and personalized algorithm. What does personalized mean? If you're being brutally honest, personalized means narcissistic. There's different ways to define personalized, right? Personalized doesn't mean necessarily you have to commodify it, right? Personalized could mean like a personal life mission, right? Like a mission that like a life that was purpose built, right? A life that was designed specifically for you, right? And that we would call that healthy. That's not being a narcissist, right? So in this case, personalized technology, right? Social media, recommendation algorithms, all these things, right? They've created like a confluence of narcissistic technology, selfish technology. The word selfish is interesting because it implies self-ish. You're not really yourself, right? You're self-ish. Because if you're truly yourself, you wouldn't be selfish, right? You would, because we're made for each other. As people, we are made for each other, to take care of each other, to grow together, to build something beautiful. We're made for each other. We are made for each other. But selfish is when you haven't recognized that yet. I truly do think maybe there is a lack of love. I know that sounds very cliche, right? Not enough love. Wow, that's a very cliche statement, but I truly do mean it. Um, there's a lot of love in this world, also a lot of hatred as well. But it's the same as air. Love is like the same as air, where you don't even really, you don't, sometimes there's too much. You get suffocated in love. When people use the term awe, right? Being in the awe of nature, of God, of the universe. It's both. It's the meeting point of opposites, right? Ah, full and ah, some. Ah, right? Like the terror, the beauty, the sheer magnitude of it all. That's awe. And love is like the same, right? Where there's so much love, you drown in love, right? You're waterboarded in love, right? You just can't take it, right? You can't take it anymore. Well, every meal we get, every breath we take, every step is an act of love. To me, I guess if I describe it simply, to borrow a little bit from Hinduism, Hindu cosmology, I think there's really only three things basically: love, change, and destruction or death, which is, of course, creation, maintenance, and destruction. The three Trimurti. In our society today, we focus a lot on creation, right? Creation is an act of love. When you give birth, right, that's an act of love. Right? It's traumatic to the child. It's traumatic going from being in the womb, right, being sheltered and taken care of, protected in their mother's body, to being in the harsh, unforgiving outside world. But it's also an act of love because creation is an act of love. To create is to breathe life into something. What does this have to do with identity? When people feel like number one, the more we're insecure of our own identity, our own self, the more we have to associate with a specific identity. Because our sense of identity is dispersed, right? Because of the internet. The internet's been wonderful in connecting people across the globe. However, because of the internet, our sense of identity, our sense of self has become dissipated, right? It's not localized. It's become very vague, right? Amorphous. And because of that, people have a very weak sense of self, right? Which is what creates these almost narcissistic. It's narcissism, but it's also um, people who need love. These are people who need love because love is what bridges that boundary between self and other, right? When there is love, there is no self and there is no other, right? Self becomes other, right? In my belief, I can't prove this. People talk about dark energy, constantly accelerating universe, ever expanding and expanding universe. Um, People talk about dark energy as a great force. I believe love is the most expansive force. Because when you truly love someone, something, love is expansive, ever expansive. This comes down to the practice of love. First, love your body, take care of it, get good rest, eat well, move. Love your emotions, be there for them, be present, sit still with them. Love your mind, love your thoughts. Let them wash over you. Let them come and go like the clouds. And love your family, love your friends, love your neighbors. Love animals, love plants, love the rocks and the ocean and the rivers and the stars, and love your enemies. Truly love your enemies. Love doesn't necessarily mean you have to be with them physically, but love is having that space, right? Just having the door of your heart open. And if you can't love an enemy, I know that's very difficult for me. Very difficult. If I feel I was slighted, or if I feel like I was attacked, but to even love that, right? To even love being frustrated, to love feeling shame or guilt, or to even love anger, to even love resentment, to even love hatred, right? Even the emotion of hatred, to love that. That's the practice of love. And if you can love one thing, you can love everything. It's the practice of love. When it comes to I feel there is so much so much loneliness and pain in the world. So much suffering in this world. There is a lot of beauty and a lot of love. If people were able to recognize that our human minds are made to take things for granted, right? And that's for a good reason, because we want to be efficient, right? Because our minds want to be energy efficient. Any sort of constant stimulation becomes unconscious. I think the most powerful lessons do come from personal experience, though. For example, for me, this will be a silly story. I was camping outside. It was raining the day before, like heavy, heavy rain. I saw a crazy double rainbow. But the more interesting part comes after. I slept. It was the next day, and it was a beautiful morning, right? Dew-covered, misty morning, and I saw a lot of geese, a huge flock of geese, right outside my tent that I was camping in. There was no one there, not a single human soul in sight. And just for that moment, hearing the geese chatter and waddle around, I too felt like a goose, right? Uh, my thoughts ceased, and I literally felt like I was a goose. Like I would waddle around, perk up my wings, and come together with my brethren. Just for that moment, my sense of self comes from others. It comes from you. And your sense of self comes from others. It comes from me. To me, it's so interesting how the more people really engage, when people truly become themselves, they truly also become for humanity, for this world as well. To be fully engaged with life, to engage, right? To be married, right? To become engaged with life. I know there's a lot, especially in like the spiritual experience. It rattles your mind, right? Like it's it's such a profound experience. But the experience is sacred of its own accord. Basically, it's like seeing a rainbow. You can't, a rainbow is beautiful because it's ephemeral, because you can't package it up, right? Once you package it, once you commodify it, it's not a rainbow, right? It's a product, it's a service, it's become you get rid of its sacredness. However, some of the most mundane things are the most profound, and some of the most profound things are the most mundane. A lot of people, for example, in spiritual training and experience, get caught up in getting more of those peak experiences, right? Flow states, peak experiences, right? Like profound oneness with everything. That's the first half, right? That's the first half of the journey. The second half is coming back home. I like to think of it like climbing a mountain, right? You want to climb up the mountain, right? Climb up the Mount Everest, right? Ascent to the top, right? The peak of the world. And then you want to come back home. You want to come back home to your heart. And that's the second half of the journey. When I was climbing Mount Hiei in Kyoto, I was climbing up a snow-covered mountain. It was muddy, dirty, cold, snow everywhere, right? And my shoes got wet. But it was so quiet, so still, so peaceful, and everything was just right. As I was ascending up the mountain to an ever higher plane of being. There was not a soul in sight until I reached the temple complex of Mount Hiei. But then, after taking in the sights, the beautiful sights of the sacred temple grounds, I came back down. And slowly the snow melted away and people started hiking up the mountain. So I went from going up the peak of the mountain, right, in stillness and solitude, to coming back down the mountain and returning to the world of my humanity, right? Returning to the world of everyday life. I did that physically, literally. So that embodied experience is very, very, it's a very, very, I would call it important work to do. Why am I talking about this with regards to identity? It's because this identity comes from that it comes from a positive or negative feedback loop. You're reinforcing your own thought patterns and habits. And why are our thought patterns becoming very ingrained? It's because we haven't been able to develop that sense of self, right? Which is to experience, to have that embodied experience, right? The physiological experience. Because you can teach a person not to touch a stove, A person can read a book about why you shouldn't touch a stove, right? Because it's hot. But if you do it once, right? If you touch a hot stove once, oh, right? You're never gonna do it again because you know it's hot, right? You need to have that direct, right? The direct experience. And so what a lot of people get, not necessarily wrong, but the big misconception with the training, for example, is people run marathons around a mountain. People go to caves, or people starve themselves. People fast. People dehydrate themselves, or people don't get sleep. Right? They think it's all for training. People think it's all for training. It's not for training. It's to have the embodied experience, right? It's to become. Why do you run up and down a mountain? To become one with the mountain, right? To feel the mountain as though you feel, right? So you become the mountain. When people train under a waterfall, it's not for discipline. It's not to become stronger. It's so you feel the waterfall flowing across your body, so you become the waterfall. Right? It's to become one. Yoga is to yoke, to unite. So in modern usage, at least in America, in English, we use the term yoga for very, very, we use it in a very superficial way. A lot of people. Um, but yoga is really an ever encompassing idea to unite, right? To unite your mind and body, your body and soul, your soul and heart, your heart and mind, right? To unite yourself with others, unite yourself with humanity, unite humanity with nature, right? It's all about, in modern usage, we would use the term alignment, right? Aligning AI with humanity, or aligning humanity with nature. So perhaps there should be, I was thinking of a digital yoga, a digital type of yoga, a digital unison. Because right now our screens are separating us, when instead maybe we can not merge, but unite with our digital technology.